You mean
in terms of, yes.
Bank reconciliation?
Yes, and financial transaction. Because looking at the records from KMC, basically 90% of the transaction is cash-based.
A lot of it.
Right? So what did you do, you understand, with respect to that issue?
So 90% of the income is cash-based, I believe. But 90% of the expenditures are through the bank. But one thing the council has been saying is how to
No. 90% is not through the bank.
The expenses?
Yes, because I will give you right now the reason why I said no. For instance, Sehu Sabali.
Oh, okay, that's different. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I understand.
You understand? So
okay.
We drew the sum of 167 million, yes. 645, 914.87. And this is different from, you understand, another total colossal sum that cannot be accounted for because there is cash flow, you understand, transaction, which is not going through the banks.
Exactly. So the committee sittings, the council sittings, the daily pays is a large part of council's payments. Those are cash-based. And I think this is what we were discussing here earlier on. The daily pays is the manner in which the setup was made, where you are looking at day laborers. But recently we resolved to move all of them to bank at Una Express. We passed a general council resolution, I believe, sometime earlier this year, because we had the queries through the commission, but not from the auditors, but through the commission. When we had the queries, one councillor raised it, and they said, why don't we now push them all to UNA? Because a lot of them, they don't want to do traditional banking. They run away from the fees. But when it was raised as a concern, we took that action. Now, in terms of the revenue generation, that one, digitalization is something that we made strides towards, and that's why we initially brought Ecotech on board, because the Ecotech plan was to make a pilot with Dimbalit. If the pilot was successful, then we can roll it out to other revenue sections gradually. But because the pilot with Dimbalit did not succeed, it was not successful, this is why we could not. Recently, part of the University of Essex grant, which is 2024-2025, the one you were looking at, $30 million, was how to now digitalize payments. But before we can do that, we need to map out the addresses within the municipality. Because without the addresses, it becomes difficult to connect somebody's digital payment to the address they reside and the property they're paying rates on behalf. So that's why we brought about that project. But it would be best if we avoided cash-based transactions because the risk is too high. You know.
Council, you may proceed.
Right. The other issue is in relation to the GPPA compliance review. I'm not sure whether you are familiar with the compliance reviews that they
seen them, yes.
have every year. Yeah. Now, what is Council's approach in relation to addressing the problems in these compliance reviews?
So I think KMC has been told by GPPA verbally and also based on the report that we are the most compliant council, although not perfect. But we've been gradually trying to improve our procurement processes. And like I said, based on the FPAC, when I sat there, I think 3 years back, and they were not happy with the Auditor General's report that some of our procurements, such as fuel and lubricants, maintenance, bulldozing, were not taken to GPPA because council was under the impression that each transaction was below the 500,000, so therefore we can buy from whoever, but they said no. When you accumulate those procurements in the year, they are way above the threshold, so they must be procured via GPPA rules through tender. So we changed that. Now our bulldozing, now our fuel and lubricants, now our maintenance is now tendered. I think this was done in 2023.
Okay. Yes. Another important thing about the procurement, which mostly institutions will overlook it is evidence of procurement itself.
Yeah.
For instance, if you have to say that you have procured, let's say, 5 tablets or phones, there has to be evidence of the procurement itself. And the regulation is such that there should be a receipt note to show that the goods that were procured were received. So for instance, if I look at the report on the 15th of February 2021 for the compliance review for the year ended 31st December 2019, you will see that the total, and this makes sense with respect to your interactions with FPAC, the total procurement activities that were carried out, the value is 76.7. Now, out of which for RFQ, we have 44.8 million, single sourcing 14.6, and then you have open national tender 8 million, 8.5, and restricted tendering 8.9. But if you now come to some of the queries by DPA, on page 26, for instance, where you have the sampling, they will give you some samples of procurement activities. You will see the procurement of office equipment. The amount is 45,850. The non-compliance, like for instance, brand names. They're using brand names in relation to these activities. So this is a problem because then you are excluding some suppliers, potential suppliers, and then you may have the people who are carrying out the procurement activities may have their own preferred suppliers. So in subsequently disadvantaging others. The number 2 issue is there was no evidence to show that the item supplied was inspected at the time of delivery due to the absence of inspection committee. Then the last one, which is very important, is that there was no delivery receipt in the file. You have seen that.
Which page?
26
Okay.
of the December 2019 review. So there was no delivery receipt or delivery note, you can call it. Do you see that?
Yes, I see.
Now, when you have these reports, do you now verify as council to have a mechanism wherein the committees will verify to make sure that there is no fraud at the level of the procurement activity? For instance, if it is carried out by the SPU, the Special Procurement Unit, or the Contracts Committee, that they don't just take council's money and purportedly buy stuffs without in fact buying them.
Yes, so the committee that deals with this a lot is the Accounts Committee.
Right.
Actually, when I left the commission last week, I believe I arrived at my office and all my furniture was serialized.
Right.
So they are implementing the fixed asset register. But these are lapses, like you said, that when it comes to the council, we pass it to the corresponding committee. But there should be a delivery note and there should be verification of delivery.
Yes.
And also, when it is time to auction, because we've conducted auctions every year, you have to now refer to the actual serial number of the item you are auctioning, so you can now account it as salvage value in your books.
Yes.
But usually, the Accounts Committee is the one who verifies these things.
Okay. Yeah, I raise it up because it's a problem for instance, when I see the national audit reports for all the area councils, you realize, for instance, when they say they procured 5 ACs and 10 tablets and so on and so forth. But then the issue now that I have in my head is, but do you have evidence of delivery? For instance, there may be delivery, it's possible, but without the delivery note, one can argue that you don't have evidence of purchasing to show that you have purchased these items or goods. Yeah. Right. Now, the other issue is in relation to the budget. What is the process of preparing the budget at council?
Okay, so actually right now we are preparing a budget. So a few years back, the ministry set up a finance advisory committee where 2 mayors sit on it and represent other councils. I was selected, and the Mansa Konko Area Council mayor were selected, and we sit with the Ministry of Finance, the Permanent Secretary, and the Permanent Secretary of Ministry of Lands. And they wanted us to change our budget style. One, they wanted it more realistic, because there's that, of course, mistake with politicians where they create wish lists. I want to do this, I want to do that, and then they develop unrealistic budgets. So we were to go back and ensure that the budgets were realistic and based on last year's revenue. Secondly, they also wanted program-based budgeting. So program-based budgeting would be you develop your development budget around programs, but through community consultation. So I believe that started in 2021, somewhere around there. We started budgeting first. The first section, the councillors go back to their WDCs and do consultation. The directors, the department heads go back to their departments and do consultation. Unit heads, and of course the mayor has big ticket items he wants to deliver for the municipality, and he also gives that. And then the finance committee starts the sittings. So the finance committee of council brings the budget together. Once they bring it together, the management first sits on it. Then it comes to the senior management, then they sit on it, and then we present it to the council. And that's the hard part.
Right.
So yesterday I was not around, but they held the first budget session. I heard it was very messy, because if you are not strong, you cannot manage the opinions. So we usually have 2 or 3 budget sessions. Then we finalize before September 30th and submit to the ministry. The ministry usually takes a very long time before they respond. Okay. So over the years, they usually respond around February of the following year, which is a problem, because then you have to start implementing your budget in January.
Yes.
So usually then the minister puts his observations or queries. Out of the years, I've seen through the first minister, 1 observation and query, and now with this minister, I've seen an observation and query last year, and then we make the adjustments according to their observations and queries and send back to them for the final endorsement of our budget. But all of this should happen before the beginning of the year, so that legally we can implement the budget. But KMC, we send it September 30th, but they never respond up to February, etc. So I think that should be fixed.
Very well. Now the WDCs, yes, their own contribution, do they put it in writing? Do you know?
So WDCs, their funds is something that we developed at KMC. We pioneered it, but it's a bit difficult. So we started giving our WDCs, I believe, in 2019 or so, around that, 200,000 annually, to prevent them from always coming and bringing odd requests to council so they can implement. The challenge there now becomes the verification and audit. And without a strong internal audit unit, that becomes a challenge. Previously, our internal unit was not very strong, but now we have a strong director. So they must put their project request in writing, submit it to the mayor's office for onward transition to the CEO. Then the CEO does the verification, then disbursement. Usually, they disburse 50% at the beginning of the year. If they retire that 50%, or it is verified before the last 50% should be given, but the CEO has the discretion, because he has to account. So a lot of the time, there's a lot of fights with him that come to my office, but the story is the same. You have to account for the funds, yes, that are given to you, and there must be verifications before you outsource. So last year, I tried to bring a new system, but I was voted down. Last year, what I was saying was, this WDC issue fund can become very controversial. So what I would suggest, the councillors design their projects, and we set up an implementation committee. And that implementation committee can implement, and then after, the councillor should be interested in the project and not in the funds. but unfortunately I was voted down in council.
That was going to be my next question.
Yes.
How does council intend to monitor the implementation? Because then, from what we have seen from Basse down, coming up, that if you leave it entirely with the WDCs, there's a high chance that it would not go the way you want. And so if that is the case, probably one can say it is funds wasted through one way or the other, whether it is through fraud or misappropriation of funds, it's all fraud, or just misplaced priorities, you name it. And so without that monitoring mechanism, you keep on giving every year, and then it is more of a routine and obligation on council than actually making sure development is registered. And so when you go around for your mayoral tour also, you will see that there would not be development which will match the level of finance that was probably given in some, and this all for all the area council. We see every year money is given, but then the level of development is different.
I agree. So I believe in the decentralization policy, meaning to empower local governments and local governments to empower their WDC.
Right.
But there's not a deliberate effort to capacitize the local government areas. I am for giving communities some funds to manage and implement community-based projects, but they need the capacity. They need the prerequisite capacity. So what we did in 2019, for the first time, we opened offices for all our WDCs. After opening offices, we hired secretaries to be posted at all the WDCs. We also bought computers, we bought printers, we gave them internet, and this was an effort to try to capacitize the WDC to implement their own projects. Because the idea was over time, we can give them a big chunk of the development fund and let them do direct implementation. But I am very careful. I always measure their capacity versus giving them these funds. That's why I believe until they can have the capacity, the administration should implement directly. But like I said, it's a democratic process. So last year, they created a WDC fund policy. In the fund policy, I was advocating for centralized implementation. And of course, all the councillors were advocating for decentralized implementation. So I was unanimously voted against. So I have to accept it. But I think there must be a deliberate effort from the ministry to create regulation around WDCs and how to empower them and how to capacitize, because the whole idea of local government is grassroots, and they are closest, so they know, they have the highest impact. I believe that.
Yes.
But they must have the capacity.
Yes, I think if they have the capacity and they are well equipped, that is just halfway the problem solved, right? But the human being needs to be also monitored.
Yes.
There has to be some form of monitoring scheme wherein, because no matter how capacity they are, no matter how really effective they are in relation to being able to perform certain functions, right? But if you don't monitor them, it is to the average human being, it's like they're having free money. And so unless you have a mechanism wherein there's an eye overlooking what they are doing and they will report to a higher body, they may not perform well. So the idea of decentralization from government to area councils and then to WDCs may fail along the way, even if you enhance the capacity, but there is no proper regulations like you have outlined to monitor and to be able to guarantee results. There's going to be a problem.
Yes, so one of the issues you have at the WDC level is that the legislator is part of the WDC.
Yes.
And in many cases, the chairperson of that WDC.
Right.
And eventually, that legislator is the oversight body at the highest level, at the council level. So there must be a separation at the WDC level between the councillor and the administration of the WDC.
Yes.
So the councillor can hold them to account. Mm-hmm. But if the councillor is part of the WDC,
it defeats the purpose.
It defeats the purpose.
It defeats the purpose entirely.
Let's ask Mayor Bensouda, what is your understanding about the 40-60 ratio as provided for in the Act?
So the
and how is KMC implementing that as per what is provided for in the Act?
Yeah, so we respect the 40-60 very much. It's one of the key features of our budget, but it's very difficult to balance. Yeah, it's always a problem, and the biggest problem is terminology. What would you consider part of your development fund, and what would you consider part of your administrative fund? Sometimes the lines are blurred. So definition is a problem there because the Act just says 60-40. It's basically just one line, 60 development fund, 40 administrative fund. Then the next challenge now is definition. What could you define as development and what could you define as administration? So that's why there must be more regulation to create the definition of that. But KMC, just yesterday I asked about the 40-60, and they said it's being adhered to. Now, something that councils also do, if they are not able to balance the budget, then they exaggerate the revenue. They think that, okay, you know, we are going to try harder next year and try to generate funds. Here, I try to generate funds, there, try to generate. But if that fails, your 40% can no longer be 40% because your expenses are fixed. But now your revenue is a projection. So if you are projecting that you may generate more revenue, and then you are taking up more staff, you are buying more materials, your 40% will not forgive you. But if you fail to generate the 60%, the admin expenses will be more than what you projected.
But realistically, if you look at, based on the documents we have reviewed, for 2018 to 2023,
yes,
the recurrent expenditure is more than 40%. Looking at your budget and the financial transactions.
Based on the financial statement or the budget?
Yes, based on the financial, the budget and the transactions.
So the budget is always balanced to 60-40. Now, if the financial statement at the end is not balanced, maybe I can say, I can look at that, but I've never seen a report where it's not balanced, but I can see how it doesn't balance, but I know at the budget session, it is always balanced. The problem is...
Yes, the budget session, because you have already explained that. Yes. You have said that, you understand, when putting the budget together, you know, the focus is made unrealistic. It's not realistically made in terms of what revenue you will collect at the end of the year. So the focus is not realistic. So if the focus is not realistic, you will not be able to, at the end of the day, have a balanced budget.
So
because your budget, you can only balance it based on your actuals in terms of revenue collection and your actuals in terms of your expenditure. Is that not the case?
No, so when I say it's not realistic, it's always after the fact.
Yeah.
So when you're developing the budget, people bring ideas. So for example, if I as mayor say, look, let's cut down these expenses because we need to stay within the 40%.
But do you agree with me that a budget is a projection and the projection should be realistic?
Yeah, so that's what I'm
coming. Do you agree?
Yes, the projection should be realistic.
Yes.
But when the finance committee, we have a revenue committee that comes up and says, no, mayor, we have a plan to transfer all payments to the banks. So with that, we project that we will collect more rates based on that plan. Or we have a plan to outsource debt collection to agents. So they bring their strategies. But if that plan fails, and in the real world, a lot of these plans, they have problems, then your budget ends up not being realistic. But the major issue that hampers our budget is the lack of subvention from the government. So when we do the budget, KMC, we always budget 46 million as projected subvention from Gambia government as per the Finance Audit Act, which says government should subvent councils with 25% of their development fund. But government has never done that. So because government does not bring their part of the budget, you will always have a problem in terms of your projected revenue. But if at all government was bringing that 46 million...
But having realized that on hindsight, that year in, year out, you don't have the anticipated income from from government. Should that be the basis upon which you will do your projections on a budget?
No, so I always...
Because that, I believe, would not be realistic.
Yeah, so I always advocate to move the government subvention on the maybe. And let's balance our budget based on what we believe we will get versus bringing government in, because then we end up in problems. So the other thing also, when we started putting our grant income as part of our revenues, the development fund grew significantly. That's why I said all these years we've been getting grants, so we've been between that threshold.
Council, you may proceed.
Yes, that's all for the first half. We have Mr. Diba, who is giving a statement for the vouchers we just got yesterday. Mm-hmm. And then the witness probably can be back for the last session.
Okay. In the afternoon?
Yes.
Okay, we may rise.
What time is the last session?
2 o'clock. Yeah. After prayers.